So I'm hosting a Bali trip, and it's something that blows my mind because this is something I never thought that I would do for like so many reasons. One, I never thought that starting a food page, sharing like my favorite recommendations, would lead to the opportunities that it has. Like as a creative, but also just as a food lover and as a traveler. Um, and so I'm just like still in awe of this opportunity. But also, Bali was the last place that I lived in before moving back to the US. If you don't know my story, I lived overseas for about 5 years. I lived in 6 different countries and I've traveled in total, I think like over 25 countries or so. And Bali was just a place that I never thought I would live in. It was a friend of mine's idea. And so, we moved there together and it honestly like really changed my life. I met a lot of people that really just helped change my perspective on things and just kind of helped me navigate as to what the next steps in my life were going to be. But it was just a place that really means a lot to me. So to have an opportunity to host a group trip, it just really means a lot. So I am hosting this group trip in partnership with Trova Trip, which, if you're not familiar with Trova Trip, they are a Portland-based company and they partner with creators to put together these international excursions. I'm very excited to be working with them. We have an itinerary full of lots of fun things. So here I'm going to share with you all the details of this Bali group trip, and I would love for you to join me. So first thing is, yes, we are going to Bali, and specifically we'll be going to Ubud and Canggu, which, if you're not familiar with Ubud is on the eastern side of the island, and it's a little more inland, and there you'll find more of like the jungles and the rice fields, and it's just a beautiful area. So we'll be in Ubud for 3 nights, and then we're going to go to Canggu for 3 nights as well. So in total, it's 7 days. And at Canggu, if you're not familiar with it, it's more of a beach town. It's like right on the coast, on the western part of the island, and it's just funny enough, like Ubud and Canggu were actually the two places that I lived in on the island. So I'm very excited to just go back and see like how it's evolved over the years. But like Ubud is more relaxed and spiritual, and Canggu is just more, it's just a little more lively. The trip does include transportation to and from the airport. I feel like that's one of the things that always stresses me out when I'm traveling is how I'm going to get to my accommodation. We are also going to have transportation to all of the planned activities in the itinerary. There are some optional things which I'll get into in a sec here, but the planned stuff, again, we'll have a local guide and we'll have transportation to all the activities. As for the food, so this is a trip that is catered for vegans. So if you are vegan or you just like to eat vegan options, this is definitely the trip for you. I know it can be tricky traveling as a vegan sometimes, as there are some places that are more vegan friendly than others. But Bali, from like my personal experience, it was, and I know it is still very vegan friendly. I was there for 8 months from 2018 to 2019, and I was blown away by all of the vegan options. Indonesian food, if you're not familiar, has a lot of dishes that are already vegan or vegetarian. Tempeh, a protein that you might be familiar with, is originally from Indonesia. The restaurants that we'll be going to on the island will be vegan or vegan friendly. One of the places we'll get to go to is a warung, which, if you don't know, it's a local Indonesian style of restaurant. So if you have never traveled to Bali before, you might ask yourself, like, is it safe? Bali is considered to be one of the safest places to travel to in Southeast Asia. And again, on a personal level, when I lived there for 8 months, I personally felt very safe, and I would drive around on my motorbike in the evenings and at night, and I personally felt fine. But just like with many touristy places, there is petty theft. So especially with phones, I would hear stories about like motorbikes driving by and like snatching your phone out of your hand. So you still want to be mindful about your belongings and just be aware of your surroundings. And we'll be in a group setting most of the time. So I hope that makes you feel a little more comfortable about traveling to Bali. So some of the activities that we have planned, I'm just very excited about. So in Ubud, we will get to go to the famous sacred monkey forest. We'll also get to go to one of the most famous waterfalls in Bali. We'll also have a cooking demonstration in Ubud and learn some Balinese dishes, and it will be vegan. One of my most favorite places that I got to go to in Canggu was go to Tanalot. It's a temple a little outside of Canggu, and it is absolutely stunning at sunset, so we'll get to do that as well. So those are just a few of the planned activities, but here's the full list here. But there's also some optional activities as well that I have added. And these optional activities, you can either choose to join me in them. There will be time to do your own thing if you want to, or maybe, you really get close with some people in the group and some of you want to break off and do your own thing when we have free time. Like, you're more than welcome to do that. And I'm happy to give recommendations as to what you can do while you're there. And again, we will also have a local guide. So kind of going off of that, if you plan to do your own thing, and again, if you want to join on the optional activities, the transportation will not be provided for those activities. So how to get around in Bali, it's quite simple. So there's an app called Gojek, which is essentially like Indonesia's version of Uber. And so just like Uber, like you just need to download the app, and then you can order a car or even a motorbike. Ordering a motorbike is going to be a lot cheaper, and I find a lot faster, because especially like Canggu, sometimes the traffic can be really a lot and condensed, and being on a motorbike makes it easier to just kind of weave through the traffic. But if that's not your thing and you'd rather be in a car, you can always order a car. So as for the visa, do you need a visa to go to Bali? And the short answer is yes, you do need a visa, but it's like super simple. So there's this website where you just can easily apply from anywhere from 14 days before your flight, but no less than 48 hours before your flight. And it is $33 US for the visa. So how about the weather? So in Bali, there is only a dry and wet season. So we are going to be there towards the end of the dry season. So what does that mean? It is still going to be pretty hot, like in the 80s or so, maybe 90s, but the humidity is not going to be as high compared to the wet season. So you definitely want to pack just like light clothes in the evening. It does cool down somewhat, not a lot. Should you bring extra cash on this trip? And yes, I think it's always a good idea to just have cash on hand just for emergencies, and especially because a place like Bali, like, cash is king. While many restaurants and shops do take card, like if you plan to enjoy any street food or do any shopping with like street vendors and things like that, it's just easier to just have cash. Okay, so after sharing with you all of the details of this trip, like how much does it cost? So the price of the trip is $1,550 if you're one of the first 8 people to get the early bird price, so you're saving $100. The regular price is $1,650, and this does not include flights. And again, that includes transportation, it includes all the planned activities in the itinerary, but it does not include some of the optional things. If you're looking into flights, like my go-to website that I've used over the last 10 years, and this is not sponsored, is Skyscanner. Skyscanner just compares like every single travel website for flight deals, but also Google Flights is another one to use that I feel like also just works pretty much like the same as Skyscanner. But I cannot believe that like this opportunity is even here, that I get to do this. And so I would love for you to come and join me. I would just love to see you in Bali.